Alex.
Hey.
Hey, Brandon said I'm starting, so welcome to Thought Raid. Today we're talking about being biracial. What is it actually like for us? Not for this guy, because he's not biracial, but for these guys.
I'm just white.
Anyways, hang out and chat with us, guys. Well, welcome to Thought Raid, where we take thoughts and find better ways of thinking about them. I'm Tim. This is Brandon, and today we have a special guest, Jared. Allen.
Hi, everybody. It's good to be here. Thanks for inviting
You can see the voice behind all of our Overwatch games.
Right? Mm-hmm. It's me. Because you've never heard these guys say my actual name on the stream.
Ever.
You know, it's not even a problem. You know? Like, it's my fault that I'm not on YouTube being that person. So. There's no identity to hide.
None. But today we're going to be talking about just the realities of being biracial. I have a handful of friends that are just biracial, like you and the two of you, and I have other friends.
He's
and
talking about us.
And I don't know, for me, I feel very blessed to have grown up in churches where the congregation is mixed. It's not just white people, or it's not just black people, or it's not just one race or the other. So I grew up very comfortable around people of other races. But there are a lot of things that I take for granted that I didn't have to deal with because I am white and I am, or was at least, the majority in this country.
Times is changing.
Times is changing. And one of the things I have noticed, which I find interesting, is that sometimes people get really upset with people that are biracial, even more than people that are just Asian, just black, whatever. And there's just different things I've noticed, but that's not going to be the entire focus today. Really, I just want to look at the whole aspects of being biracial. I know that, you've talked about sometimes where you've just, your dad was white, your mom was black, and sometimes you where do I fit in all of this? And there's that going on. And then, the both of you look more black than you look white. You look more Asian than you look white.
You're talking to me too. I was like, okay.
Given the complexion.
And people will also probably sometimes in your life have targeted you for that. So, I don't know. I felt like it was important to talk about this, and just kind of go into it from your perspectives because I want to learn personally. So if you guys have any questions as we're going to this, just let me know and I'll be reading the comments.
Yeah, well, cool. I feel like it's not just a biracial thing because there's other things that played into it, like socioeconomic status, sure, and location. Because I grew up in Easton. I don't know if you guys know where that is, but it's a trailer park that's 15 miles, I think, east of us.
Okay. So still in North Carolina.
Yeah.
East of us.
Yeah, but where'd you grow up?
Pretty much Louisville. And,
Louisville?
After about 17 or 18, we moved to Winston, so I really haven't, lived anywhere else. It's always been the South, if you will.
Yeah. Being in the South, I remember we moved to Davie County when I was in second grade, and Davie County is predominantly white. Specifically, there's two parts of the county. You have the old farmers, and then you have the new money coming in the wealthy neighborhoods like Bermuda Run and Oak Valley. Yeah. And those were predominantly white too. And so for me, it was kind of weird because where we lived in Easton in that trailer park, it was multiple different races, and it was just people who either didn't come from money or just were not taught financial responsibility, or just had financial situations that were attributed to different things, like how they were raised. My dad was an orphan, so it's not just that he was Asian, but he came over here without any money, without any family. And then he met my mom, and then they got married, and he had his first kid at 15. Yeah, he had his first kid at 15, was married at 15 or 16, then he got divorced. And then he met my mom and then had me. And so from the age of 15 where he is now, he's had children, so he's never really been able to live life, normal American life, I guess.
No.
I also didn't realize you weren't the oldest sibling.
I have a half sister.
Okay.
who is also half white. Like my dad is from Thailand, and both of the wives that he had, and I say had because my mom passed away, were just Caucasian, just white women.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So what about you? Your dad's white?
Yeah, I mean, you like, there's no good way of being like, oh well, he's from this part of Europe and this time. Like, sadly, you can only categorize him as white.
I know.
That's kind of a thing to like. You can be white American, I guess, and also saying Caucasian is wrong most of the time. But just because like I don't know, something like the Caucasus Mountains, like that is also in Europe. Also in Europe. So, yeah, he's white. Mom is black, even though, like, she also has some different...
backgrounds.
Right, like, the family name is McKinnon, That's not African. And there's definitely, like, I guess you can say white or, like, lighter complexions in the family. It just turns out that, our particular family was a bit darker,
I find it interesting, particularly though, since you touched on it though, about like the oversimplification of our backgrounds and stuff. Because in all technicality, yes, I'm white, but I have German in me. I have England, like Anglo, if you will, right. Saxon in me. I have, I think, Swedish, other just different places of Europe. So I'm not just white.
You say that, and it makes me think like. My wife's family, they're all white people, just white as can be,
Wonder bread.
They're very Wonder bread.
Actually, I'll repent for that.
Am I able to say that? I'm not quite sure.
I hope that gets bleeped out in the YouTube recording. But anyway.
But anyways, they're white, and I believe my wife's mom is Dutch, and her father, I think, is German. And so thinking, okay, well, she's just a white girl, Well, she's a mixture of German and Dutch. How come I don't view somebody who's German, somebody who's unless they come over here and they've got that's a horrible accent. I was trying to do like a German accent.
I could hear it coming out. I was like, what?
Well, it was a partial thought. Like, I'm going to try and do this, and I gave up before I committed.
Okay, I didn't even notice.
I noticed. I was like, I hear another accent coming out here.
But, it's like, I've met fully German people, and I've met fully Dutch people, and, like, when I see them, it's like, oh, okay, you're different, But when I meet white people who are, like, second or third generation mixtures that are just like, you're white. So it's like they stop being German and Dutch in my mind, and they're just white. However, I've met other people, especially Asians, even if they're like 2% Asian, oh, you're Kanta guy, or like Hispanic people have it the same way, and black people, it's just more telltale, they're more, I don't want to say symptoms because there's nothing wrong. What am I trying to say? More nuances?
That works.
Racial nuances. Where it's like, okay, well, this person's black. This person's white.
Like just cultural differences or ethnic differences.
Yeah.
Yeah, but did you see your family? Because when I was younger, I remember that all I knew was my family. It's all I had known, all I had been informed of, all I've experienced. So my worldview, I was looking at the world through the small bubble of my worldview, and I didn't have anything to compare it to, right? So, for instance, we were... my mom was a Christian, and my dad was a Buddhist. Neither of them practiced hardcore; they just associated. And I remember when I was younger, I think like first grade or something like that. It's where your memories, you can remember them, but they're super foggy. But we tried to go to a church, and there were these two white ladies standing at the door. And they allowed me and my mom to go in. But they were talking to my dad, who was right behind us. They were like, "Sir, you need to stay outside." Because he was dark-skinned, and they thought that he was black. And I was really confused by that, and that really pissed my family off, And then I remember in grade school, probably like first or second grade or something, because my dad used to work construction outside, and he tans really well, so his complexion's actually darker than Jared's. But I made this little picture book because, it's like, well, draw a picture of your house, draw a picture of your dog, whatever. Like, this is my dog. My dog is brown, whatever. Yep. And I remember I used the black crayon for my dad, right? And we had parent-teacher conferences. And so they knew my dad was Asian, right? But my perception was, oh, he's black.
Interesting.
Just of color.
Well, it's like, okay, I need the darkest crayon possible because he's not this color brown, because I'm this color brown. And then I remember handing that in to my teacher, and my teacher was like, we need to talk to your parents. Because
right, like you did this wrong.
Well, no, the assumption was that my mom was cheating on my dad.
Oh.
Right, because they knew that my mom was white and my dad was Asian, or possibly Hispanic, because he also looks Hispanic. But my perception was, okay, well, he's just really dark. I didn't really understand the whole black versus white, and it's not even versus, but black compared to white, compared to Hispanic, compared to Asian. That didn't register in my mind when I was younger. Like, did it for you?
Not entirely. Like, it's weird because not only is there, I don't know, some sort of ethnic divide, there was also a physical divide because, my parents are divorced. Ooh. So, and it happened at a very young age. Mm-hmm. So, I would sometimes see my black relatives and, sometimes I would see my white relatives. Like, we would go see... We would go see black grandma just like on occasion, and then like white grandma was for like birthdays and Christmas.
Mm-hmm. Interesting.
And it just not always. I mean, it wasn't like set in stone, but every Christmas I would spend with Mama, who was my dad's mom.
Okay.
And it was just like, I guess that's normal. I mean, like grandmas are normal. Like
right.
That's as far as it went. Yeah, I didn't know I need to specify if, they came from somewhere else or if they have a different complexion.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. As far as kind of like your instances, it was just... I can only think of like a particular thing, like 5th grade, we went... I don't even think this relates, but we went on a trip to the Outer Banks, and Mom couldn't come, so Dad went as like an official chaperone.
Mm-hmm.
And
now, just for context sake, how white is your dad's skin tone was?
He looks at me.
This is our scale for white at the table.
Like, you get to be a wonderful comparison. Like, as far as I know, Dad doesn't tan. So, like,
neither do I.
Get rid of the freckles and bada bing.
Wow.
So,
we're talking probably whiter than me.
And, he's there, and he recently, I don't think he, like, colored his hair or something, or like, something was different about his hair, which made it look, like, red. Mm-hmm. And there happened to be a redhead, like, in class. He was my friend, and, everybody was like, oh, look, it's so-and-so's dad.
Oh, no.
Assuming that your dad was this kid's dad.
Yeah.
Okay.
And, like, no, he belongs to me. And everyone's like, no.
Bro, check his tag.
Honestly, like, beep. Show us the birth certificate. And,
oh, my God.
And it was just weird that I had to defend like, this is my dad, like, it may be weird because, Mom showed up all the time because that's the parent who was there. Mm-hmm. And, all of a sudden Dad was there and he's not my dad. So that was, that was super weird.
Mm.
Yeah, I remember, like, that same feeling of ostracization.
Yeah.
Being ostracized.
Ostracized, yeah.
We were doing this play one time, and the duck dance? Da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da.
That's the chicken dance.
Chicken dance, yeah.
The duck dance.
Oh, we were all dressed up like duck. There were baby chicks or whatever. And I remember...
Probably chickens.
There were like 30 kids in the class, and we had these duck suits and whatnot, and I was the only kid in class that received special treatment. And by special treatment, they sent me home with a note telling my parents that I could only participate if I was wearing white leggings because I was so tan. Right? All the other kids were white, and they wanted everything to look the same. So they made me go to Walmart or Kmart or whatever it was back then and buy some of the, like, I'm talking like girls' tights, and I had to wear those if I wanted to participate.
That's weird.
Oh, that was so embarrassing.
Disgusting.
Yeah. But I don't know, just like stuff like that. It happened, and I remember getting made fun of for it, you know. And like the thing I was talking about where they wouldn't let us into the church, and I just took it as one of those things like, oh, this is what everybody goes through, you know. But I guess as I got older, I started thinking about those things, and my social circle started growing, and I got, you know, access to more friends that were not, you know, living in that same trailer park, or just not my family or not my neighbors. Because I always thought, okay, well, my neighbors, you know, they're just part of my bubble, so they're not connected to this outside world. Once I get out there, there's all these other worldviews I'm not going to be that I'm going to have to get exposed to. But then I started seeing, oh, this is actually different. Like, not everybody goes through this. You know, it seems like my life has a different set of rules on it. Like rules and regulations and ways I'm perceived, and there's nothing I did to earn that, and I can't get rid of it either. So I don't know how that was for you, but I remember, man, like very unfair jokes were made at my expense. Some of the more frequent ones were the whole Asians having tiny penises thing. That was always thrown in my face, especially in middle school when we started like having gym class and stuff and changing and stuff. You know, I guess because other kids were uncomfortable and I was the easiest scapegoat. It's like, let me find an Asian. Oh, hey, small penis joke. He sees an Asian. I'm like,
what?
Where's this coming from? Like, my dad and my mom never told me that this was part of being who I was born into.
Yeah.
You know, like, did you have stuff like that too?
Well, let's see. And being called out, one, it was kind of easy, I guess, you know, because of what I look like, and then when I speak, you know, it doesn't like sound black. So the go-to recently, and I'm glad it's stopped now, has been like, if you've ever heard anybody say, "Oh, you're like the whitest black person I know."
Ooh.
Huh.
Or if
so is that a compliment? Like, what is that exactly?
Is it a compliment? Like, what would happen if I'm just black, or like, what makes me white? You know, like that's the kind of question. Because, like, what do you think of when you think of white? You know, I guess you know you don't have to answer. And then, like, what do you think when you think black? Right. So,
well, I think the sad part about that though is that whether you want to have a good perspective or not, or a healthy perspective or a loving perspective, there are these images and things associated with that. Regardless, it's just it's just natural.
Easy stereotypes or whatever.
Yeah, like you think Asian, you think high standards, small penis, crew cut, short. You know, you think of all that stuff.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So an instance of that, just grade school. A black kid came up to me and was like, "Yo, you have waves." And what's that mean? And you know, I'm guessing.
Does it sound like your hair waves?
Yes.
Okay.
And you know, his thought process like, what do you mean this black kid doesn't know what waves are? He must be stupid. You know. So, I go home that day. I'm like, Mom, what are waves? And she's like, Oh, well, it's your hair and how it's growing. You know. And it's like, Oh, okay. Well, that's cool, I guess. You know? And I guess on the topic of hair, that's just a big thing in general. You know, I'm sure because it's real funny. You know, don't get the black girl's hair wet, or like it may not even be that person's hair, and you know it's something that's super. I don't know, that sensitive topic. Like if you've ever heard of like workplaces being affected because you know not necessarily black, but just like if hair is like too loud, you know, if it's doing too much, like you can't wear it natural. Like, as impressive as, like, you know, like a 2-3 foot afro is, like, oh, you can't, we don't allow that hair in the building. It's a bit too distracting.
Really?
Like, that is the official reasoning, you know? Like, I was wondering, can your hair be down? Or, you know, even... Like we had just got done eating, and you just went up and like you know touched my hair, and at a certain point it shouldn't be a big deal, but therein like I do have to work for this, and you know the slightest touch can mess it up, and you know I don't want to be like a bougie posh like don't touch the hair, but like. it's a part of you.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's the same way if somebody kind of like splashed something on your shirt, you'd be upset.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting.
And that's kind of, just the point I'm getting to. It's just a different experience that other people wouldn't necessarily experience.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if the days you had like, is it a faux hawk, mohawk? You know, when you put you wake up in the morning, you do something to your hair, you put the product in, and you have it, right?
Right.
It'd be really insulting if somebody was just like, your hair looks so soft, and they just touched, you know? Like, if you would be insulted if somebody just touched anywhere on your body without consent.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's what it is, you know? Like, there's got to be a little, like, ask permission first. Like, yeah, my hair is really soft. Thank you for noticing. You get your hands off me. You know? Like, in the nicest way possible. You don't know me like that.
Don't. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I think that probably just stems in general of like people don't always think before they act. They just do that. Like people have done things to me. I don't think about it because like to get my hair like I had it pointed, or even sometimes like this, there's just straight up gel.
Uh-huh.
So if you touch it, nothing's going to happen. It's like
it retains its shape.
It does. But I don't know that about your hair.
No, I could just I could turn it and it would stay that way. You know, like we're doing this now. Like
yeah, this hair, like I have to like specifically just put gel into it and then you can touch it all you want and it's still gonna stay that way because it's got gel in it.
I was just thinking this because I was somewhere the day before yesterday or something. I went somewhere and it was like really hot, like annoyingly hot. Mm-hmm. And there was this black lady and she was really pretty, but her hair was like, I guess like there's some kind of course the texture of the hair is different, just like Asian, like the straight up Asian hair is like really thick and really like resilient and whatever and straight. It's like curly and like it breaks off and stuff. Like Tasha was telling me about that. Like her hair just breaks off like nothing. Mm-hmm. I get maybe it's due to the curls or something. Anyways, this lady had this stuff in her hair and it just held its shape so well, but it just looked so uncomfortable, And I was just thinking, like, there are so many different things that she has to go through just to like feel comfortable in her skin.
There's a bit of conforming that people have to do. In order to be accepted or acceptable. Mm-hmm. And, it's very easy not to realize that when you don't have to do it.
Yeah. So, like, okay, so in your situation, you are half white, Caucasian, whatever. We'll just...
You can say white.
I'll just say white. You're half white, half black. I'm half white, half Asian. Mm-hmm. Right. Did you ever have difficulty fitting in? Did you ever have difficulty associating with one culture or the other? Because I know you talked about your family.
Mm-hmm. Right. So, yeah, absolutely. It's, to the point where I look like these people, but I don't act like them, so I don't get accepted. I sound like these people, but I don't look like them. So, even if they do socialize with me, it's not always, I guess, transparent or not always to the forefront. Mm-hmm. Like, is Jared your friend? Yeah, kind of, sure, whatever. Speaking, just like younger days. I'm very thankful to have a group of friends that that love and respect me for me, and make me realize that I need to love myself as well. That's another issue. But that is, and that's where that stems from. Like, oh, I'm so different. Is something wrong? Mm-hmm. Or, like, it doesn't matter if I don't listen to the same music or necessarily have the same experience as you, nor do I need to look like you. We could be friends. Mm-hmm. Or, or maybe not.
Yeah. Growing up, being Thai was always, like, touted as, oh, this is awesome. My mom loved Thai culture. Mm-hmm. People love Thai food. Like, whenever I go somewhere and I tell somebody that I'm half Thai, they're like, oh, do you know how to make Thai food? I was like, I get so tired of questions like that,
Well, I got that super wrong then.
Huh?
You're Thai, not
Yes,
Korean.
Yeah, no.
I thought you was Japanese.
Oh gosh. But with that, there have been different times in my life where, aside from the people, like walking in the lunchroom in high school and having that guy shout "Gundai guy" and just like embarrass me in front of the entire place, whatever. Like, aside from that, there were also the sides where it's like, okay, well, you're fully this side. So your life is all about being Buddhist. Your life is all about making Thai food and, Thai culture, which, heck, I don't even know what Thai culture looks like because my dad was an orphan and there's very small pieces. But, maybe it has more to do with that orphan mentality where my family grasped at whatever nuances of culture they could that made sense. But just thinking, okay, I'm going to simplify you into these little areas of your life because you say, oh, you're Thai, right? Like, I got so tired of that too. And even in my current life, I don't know, it doesn't seem like I fit in either. I always
because
thought,
you get corralled into a certain space.
Yeah, and also, like, in my social spaces, like at work or whatever, I guess as growing up, I got a thick skin when it came to racial jokes and whatnot. And I remember my mom always told me, the whole sticks and stones may hurt your bones, but words may never.
Which is
words
like probably
hurt, man.
the most false thing
That is
so
anybody
false.
has tried to popularize. Like, yeah, like at this point, yeah, I could probably take a stick or a stone, but like, don't make fun of me.
Yeah, well, the thing is, like, so long, I was like, okay, well, I guess, the mature perspective I'm supposed to have is to not let this bother me. So I decided, okay, I'm going to make a joke of myself first, that way other people can't. I'm going to enter into that space, that way they can't laugh at me.
Right.
Right? And, I think it was kind of interesting because our dynamic is kind of like that too. We were talking about that before the stream, how I can enter into these spaces where we kind of joke about it. And I think that's just a habit I formed.
To go back, well, not to go back, but like to make it like almost like a victim mentality, or like the most proper way to talk about things like that. Like, it shouldn't be a joke. Just like, it's not a joke. We're talking about a person who's living something. Like, saying coming over to you and being like ching chong should not elicit or solicit any type of laughter or comedy, but it will. Or coming up to me being like, we got some fresh watermelon over here. Like, one, I don't even like watermelon. I'm sorry. It's chewy water. Get that out of my face.
Crispy water.
Crispy water, that makes sense.
It's crispy water.
Ooh.
It's just stereotypes like that. But, have become so normalized to make it funny. But
I really understand what you're saying, though. It's the same reason why I go back and forth on some things that I allow myself to find funny nowadays. Because, like, on the one hand, it's fun to make fun of situations that you've been through that are dark to make them more lighter. Or situations. On the other hand, you still feel like it should have never been to begin with. Like, I can't completely shake that whole thought. Like, for instance, like, there's some words and stuff that I will joke with, but then I wonder to myself, like, am I just perpetuating something by still making it funny and using it in a funny sense?
I've had moments like that too, because I'll repeat some of the jokes that I engage in to myself when I'm just by myself. I'm like, that's actually not really funny, and that makes me feel bad.
you think, dang, I laughed at that.
Yeah.
I thought I was better. Well, and also, it's super easy to deflect things with comedy.
Yeah.
Laughing makes things better. It's but it kind of superficial.
That's the thing. Comedy is one of the most probably, like, seductive ways of slipping things into culture. Because it's like, I may not accept something if it came at me with a fist, but if it made me laugh, I'm more likely to laugh at it and forget about it until it just sinks in, and then it piles up to eventually become something I actually internalize.
Yeah. I know I've got people in my life where, and they're newer people, like within the past couple of years, where a joke will be made, and it's something that, because I just assumed that it was funny and just accepted it, I would laugh at it, and they, with a straight face, would just say to the person saying the joke, "That's actually not funny. That's kind of hurtful." And boom, conviction. And what I mean by conviction, for those of you who don't know where we're coming from, it's like, okay, well, the Holy Spirit's showing me that this is not healthy, right? I'm actually accepting that now instead of saying, "You shouldn't think that's healthy." No, it's like, I fully accept it because, well, I'm learning what's right from wrong. And that's been really interesting, especially this past year with Black Lives Matter. Didn't mean to look at you when I said that. But
where else would you?
Especially Black Lives Matter.
Brandon's also very passionate about the subject.
But I dropped my thought train.
Things that you should not be finding funny, but do, and God convicting about them, and people not knowing what conviction means.
Yeah, I guess like that's me removing the facade and identification that I have with a specific race with being a human that's valuable. Because you said something really good. You said it shouldn't be a joke. We're talking about a person. And I've got a friend who has been dealing with racism for their entire life, and we didn't know that it bothered them as much as it seems to. And I don't think they know either. And it just it's shocking, because when you cover something up with humor and you don't actually address it, and your social group responds to it as, okay, well, this is actually acceptable. We're not going to call this out. When somebody finally calls that out, it's like, whoa, why have we been accepting this whole time? And if that's not where my identity is, where is it? But Jared, with all this stuff, I guess springboarding off of what Brandon said, how much of it do we get to choose? Because on one hand, we talked how we didn't want this biracial talk to just be about racism.
Right.
It's identifying as something. How much of it do we get to choose to be a part of, and how much of it do we actually have to reconcile and figure out, and it just happens and we have to deal with it?
Well, I think that comes from a place of like nature and nurture, or the experience you lived, the place you lived, and it also extends to what's the word if you're not biracial? And you're just,
is anybody not biracial?
Are you just white or just black, or you identify as just just that thing? I say that because it's just a different experience, just because I'm biracial and I go through something, somebody who is identifies as black probably also went through that. So it's not exclusive, I think, is what I'm trying to get to. It might be slightly different, but I'm not sure if I'm answering your question. But how much do you get to choose? You don't, you might be able to choose you might be able to choose the quantity of how much you experience it. Because, if I were to just embrace black culture, then I would be able to fit in with a whole bunch of, a whole new crowd of people. Not that I shun it, rap isn't my favorite genre of music, but I got a few go-to songs, I suppose, and I hate that's the only example, or because I didn't grow up in that neighborhood, that where just black culture is so hard to describe. Say if there was gang influence, that's a bit stereotypical, but families have to deal with that. There are black families who have to deal with that, who want nothing to do with that. But you look like that, so you are obviously that. They don't get to choose. Or you can grow up in a neighborhood like mine, which was predominantly white. I can't tell you well, I could tell you the one black neighbor that we had were actually Chris Paul's parents. Like they
Are you
used to live.
serious?
Yeah, they used to live like
Oh,
up
wow.
the street, and that is kind of the only color that I could tell you that was in the neighborhood. So it was a little different. Like it's literally like, oh, he's one of the good ones, which is also a horrible thing to say.
Now, predominantly black is bad, but you're one of the good ones.
Yes, exactly. Like, oh, they're listening to their rap music and making weird gestures that I don't understand.
I remember out in Davie County, there's somebody that moved in and they were black, and I remember one of my neighbors saying, "There goes the neighborhood." I was like, "What are you talking about?"
Right? Yeah. There goes the non-diversity. You know? Like, I'm sorry you had to experience something new. So yeah, you don't. Sadly, you don't get to choose.
Yeah. This past year was really interesting because the Black Lives Matter movement happened, and it brought a lot of things.
It definitely came to the forefront.
Yeah.
Like it existed before, but
Right.
we there was a chance to express it so much more.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I could understand both sides because when you're biracial, you get the privilege. And I use that term lightly. You get the privilege of saying, okay, I can step over here and be Asian, or I can step over here and be white. It's both. Both apply. I have a free pass. It's like multi-pass.
I guess.
Multi-pass.
And so, like, when people were talking about Black Lives Matter, I understood the side that said, well, all lives matter. Because all lives do matter. Life matters, period. But then there was also this thing of like, well, why are you so upset? That happened forever ago. None of us are, like, why do you want reparations from a white guy? Because Brandon didn't participate in slavery or whatever. Mm-hmm. I totally understand that. But I could also understand, because you were talking about, we mentioned, well, there goes the neighborhood. You're one of the good ones. There's a reason why that mechanic is built in.
Right. There's a reason why you feel that way.
Yeah. Well, also, like a generation or two ago, that family had issues that prevented them from experiencing a wealth of different opportunities.
Right. Like people take the context of, I guess, like slavery and the civil rights movement. Like slavery, yeah, that happened a few hundred years ago, but like the civil rights, that was a generation and a half ago. Like it's alive and well, and there are a lot of interesting ways to like say you've combat this. I think it was maybe like a copy pasta. Hopefully it wasn't a real comment. It's like, there's no way America's racist. We had a black president. What other and maybe it has a good point. Like, what other country has had a black president besides, I don't know, a black country? But like, France, England has never had a colorful. What do they have? Chancellors?
France? Prime Minister?
Prime Minister, that's the one. Whatever prominent country you can think of, like, has never had, not even black, but just like a different ethnic background of a person to be in power there. And like, okay, that makes sense, but all racism wasn't eradicated when, Barack Obama stepped through the White House doors, like,
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's just an interesting way how you can either explain or defend it away. Just like another filter to put on it.
Yeah.
Well, I think that made it so much easier to simplify the whole situation. But beyond Black Lives Matter, this whole Asian Lives Matter thing, how that I think it was like an Asian lady got attacked by somebody. And
There are a lot of stories that I've seen.
Yeah.
That, you can get called out. You get called out just because of the way you look. Like, how does somebody rationalize putting physical harm on another person because of something else that happened? Like, we're gonna beat you up because of Corona. How interesting. What's your thought process? Like, how do you come to that conclusion?
I'd say probably fear.
Well, it's because all of those little Asian people were responsible for coronavirus. If they didn't eat stuff like bats, we wouldn't have it.
They didn't eat stuff like bats. Oh my god.
That shouldn't be so delicious for
Well, like, here's where I wanted to go with this, though. Like, when Asian Lives Matter, I guess, tried to become a thing, because it definitely wasn't as big of a thing as Black Lives Matter, and it is not as big a thing as Black Lives Matter. I remember me and Ariane talked about it because, you know, I don't know what the numbers are, and if some of you guys know, I'd love to hear. But there were also tons of Asian slaves building the railroads going west, you know? And a lot of the slave owners, like, there was something happened. I remember reading this article, or I think somebody was telling me a story about this, but like all the white women that were like the slave owners or part of those families started getting into a relationship with the Asian men over there, and they were like breeding, you know, and the white men didn't like that. That's why they exported the Asians again. And I never thought about that, and honestly never knew about that until prior to this year. But all this stuff of Asian, like talking about that and all this Asian hate and stuff, it's like I saw more of that when I was a kid, you know, but in my adult life, I don't think there's been any racism that I've acknowledged. And so maybe it's because I lean more into my white side, or maybe it's because I chose differently or chose not to view it or receive it. I don't know. Like, would you say it's gotten better or worse for you in your adulthood?
As far as being an adult, I can't tell you like a explicit racist thing. Mm-hmm. You know, maybe somebody that was uncomfortable with, you know, how I looked was a little standoffish before they actually got to know me and was like, and sadly was like, oh, he's one of the good ones. Mm-hmm. Or, like, yeah, I don't think there's any strong... Is it getting better? I want to have the faith and say yes. You know, like, there are a lot of instances and beliefs that have come out recently that would make you to believe, like, oh, wow, racism is alive and well. But you can't just look at all the negative. There's certainly been some progress. Mm-hmm. You know, whether it's actual laws being reformed or just people being better.
And I feel like it's important to kind of look at what's happening to you in particular and what they're saying lining up with what you're experiencing. Because I feel like there are probably some places in the United States that may be more racist than other places.
Sure.
And I feel like at the same time also like, and this is, I feel like part of this, if there is any like increased standoff between people of other races and white people right now, it's just that, at least for me and for those like my parents and those close around me, the main concern is like all this stuff is being heavily pushed on us. Like all of a sudden, like we weren't hearing about it and now we are hearing about it. And so it's like, for us, it's not lining up with our personal experiences, but we are also willing to believe maybe we've been blind to this the whole time. We're not sure, kind of thing. And so it's like, I feel like it's important to look at it as like, so like in your situation, like, are you overtly experiencing people that are blatantly treating you differently?
Right.
And if that's happening, that needs to be addressed because that's not okay. But if it has to be searched for, I feel like that should be a sign of progress that it's being searched for. Something could be said about that. Mm-hmm. But I guess it also depends on where you're at, because I feel like there probably are some places that are much less integrated, much more likely to be racist. Like I had a friend who came from California, and she was talking about how, like, in California, like there is like a Korean part of the town, and there is a, you know, like somehow that's also a Japanese part of the town, and then there's like all these races are like subdivided in California. Like, why is the place that is seemingly, from what I'm being told, the most segregated trying to tell the rest of the world?
So I think that's a bit of progress, right? Like these groups of people get to celebrate their culture, like in America, you know, like that's why I don't like in New York. There's like Little Italy or Chinatown, you know,
Right.
like there are pockets that aren't necessarily segregated. It's just like they get to live the experience without being in that country. You know, it's not necessarily like nobody put them there. They chose to be there. As far as I know, that's my understanding. Like nobody fenced them in there and were like, well, we're here, we may as well just do it. It's more they collected there and they're allowed to do it, so they do it.
But to my understanding of at least what I remember her talking about is that they just kind of stay to themselves. And that was my concern. It was like, how are we going to become more interracial, more connected if we just keep segregating off into pockets? Like, I understand. Like, one of the things that I got from her that was actually very helpful was recognizing that, you know, we need to celebrate diversity and, like, down to where they've come from, all that kind of stuff. Like, that hit me because it's like I began to like assemble in my mind. It's like unity through diversity, you know, enjoying all of our differences, and that's what makes us great, rather than unity through conformity.
So I want to springboard off that real quick. Do we have any comments to catch up on?
Yes, there are comments, but it's one of the comments is someone was just talking about a song or something that they wrote, so I wasn't quite sure how to react to that. David Ibrahim, he was talking about he was at some point you were talking about self-deprecation, and he was laughing, like talking about things like good old self-deprecation defense.
Yeah.
Yes,
It's a very good defense, you know. Like if you laugh at yourself, then you're not a victim anymore. You know, you might feel bad about it, but you're not being picked on. You're in the joke.
And then the same person was talking about her song. She had said, Survivor Season 5 took place in Thailand, titled Survivor Thailand. So she brought that up, and then she wanted to know where Davie County was.
Oh, Davie County is...
Well, Davie County is just down yonder.
Down yonder in North Carolina, about 20 minutes west of freaking Winston-Salem.
Winston-Salem.
Which is Forsyth County, if you wanted to know.
Yeah.
See, I mean, they're adjacent, right? Like, they're neighboring counties.
Yeah. Yeah, they got their butts right up against each other. Butted up against... But,
Back to back is also acceptable.
it's not as enjoyable.
It's not. It's... Oh, my God.
Okay, so... I was thinking, I heard Falashide say this in my head. Falashide is a friend of ours. She's a life coach, and she's got a lot of good stuff going on, but she's really good. She has a good grasp on cultural awareness. She's African American, and she's always correcting me on my speech. Not like you need to change, but just like offering me a different perspective. And I heard her say this almost like the Holy Spirit when we were talking about being biracial, and she's like, I could hear her saying, let's be more educated about this. Instead of saying biracial, which if you look at it from that perspective, it could be considered a negative thing. Let's consider it multicultural, right? Because I feel like it that says the exact same thing, but it also explains the segregation. It explains why people associate with whatever.
I think it's more encompassing as well. You know, biracial kind of like limits it to... I guess just two, seeing that, you know, bi or whatever. But, yeah, multicultural, wonderful terminology.
Yeah, well, it also speaks more to our experiences because a lot of the stuff we experience isn't due to our race. It's due to the culture surrounding our race. I was just thinking about what you were saying about being perceived a certain way. And, you know, I mean, like the way you're dressed now, you've got a polo on, it's buttoned down. Like, I don't consider you one of my black friends, you know. You're just my friend. But then I think, like, the visceral reaction that I have to the way people are dressed sometimes, for instance, like, the cultural, because you have different types of black culture, for instance. You know, you have African culture, where they've got the head wraps and the braids and stuff, and all the bright colors. And then you have American black culture, which is more like the wrap and the oversized shirts and whatnot. And it's like there are different reactions that I receive based on which culture is being addressed, because there are different behaviors that are associated with them. And same thing with Asian culture. Like if you look at, for instance, I have some friends up in New York, and they were talking about in their little microcosm of Asian culture, it's only Asian people. If you come in and you're white or you're some other race or whatever, and you don't really understand their culture, it's like, well, come have dinner with us, but you stay over there, let us stay over here, let us have our dinners, let us have our whatever. And I just feel like being biracial or multicultural, I think one of the hardest things growing up that way has been understanding that, well, I don't have to choose one or the other. I can be both. Right, and I don't have to pigeonhole myself into, if I'm Asian, my life has to be led by these rules. If I'm black, my life has to be led by these rules. It's like, my name is Jared, I like polos, and I like Overwatch. My name's Tim, I like stuff. I don't know. But I think what you said made so much sense. It's not a joke, it's a person. People are a lot more dynamic than just being a specific race or a specific culture. Mm-hmm. Like, I could just imagine Brandon in chains and oversized shirts just as much as I can imagine him in, just whatever. I don't know. That's the first thing that came to mind. Like Asian.
What are the German overalls?
Oh, I don't know if there's a name for them.
Yeah,
but
there's totally a name for them.
I
can't think of it. I'm only thinking sauerkraut. That's not it.
That's definitely not
Lederhosen.
Oh,
I could totally picture that.
I've spent no time researching German culture to be able to tell you that.
Or a nice plaid skirt. I can imagine that too.
That's interesting though if you think about it. I have not dove into German culture, and that is because of the stigma. Well, not because it has a stigma behind it, but it does.
There's a bit of a stigma.
Yeah, because Hitler.
Well, he is German culture. I'm kidding. I'm grossly kidding, guys. That's what a lot of people think, though.
I can't forget the beautiful experience I had while I was still working in Sears, and a German man came to my place where I was working, and I was expressing about my excitement about how I've been expanding my breakfast and how all the things I was eating, and he was very straightforward with me. He was like, "That is nothing." He was just like, he explained all the eggs and the bacon and all the other things that he's adding to like this big breakfast. So I was like, that's very interesting first real notable experience with a German I've had. Very upfront. But I was able to handle it because also a lot of northern people are very upfront too.
Was he saying your breakfast was trash?
Primarily. Like it was weak. I don't know, but that reminded me of that. Mm-hmm. But it come to think of it though, like you're asking me like, what's the name of that? Like you could if you wanted to have said that because I have German lineage.
Well, right, like I didn't know that prior to this right here.
Yeah,
and I could have been like, Brandon, what's it called? And you were like, I don't know. And you're like, oh really? That's weird.
You're white. You should know.
Like, oh, you must not be that thing. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh, something is different.
Oh my God, I don't know anything about German culture. That's part of my heritage.
Right? Like, how strange are you?
That's something I take for people just straight up look at me as either white or American or both.
It's like you don't have culture. You're white, Brandon.
I know.
You just stole from all the colored people.
Forget the fact that I have British within me. Forget the fact that I have German within me. Forget the fact that I have Norse within me. Like, it doesn't matter. I'm white.
Yeah, here in America, that's what you are.
I am white. But it does matter.
You'd also be American if you went to Europe, so, I hate to burst your bubble.
Well, yeah, I'm too far removed from Europe to be considered anything else. I might be able to blend in Britain, maybe.
Mm-hmm. Talking about that specifically, Ariane was talking with me about going abroad because, she was part of YWAM and she traveled and stuff. And she said that when she would go to places like India or she went to Thailand, she was often received as this white entity, because it's so different there.
White entity.
Well, I say that because if you go to places that are poverty-stricken, if you're white, they're like, oh, this person has money because they're a white person. That's the assumption over there, right? But there's also places where it's like, you go over there, you're a target, right? Because you're so different from everybody else. They know that you don't habitate this place.
Sure.
She was like, because of your skin tone, she's talking to me, of course, because of your skin tone, because of the way you look, are you Middle Eastern? Are you Hispanic? Are you Asian? Nobody knows, And I don't know. Sometimes I think about that and I'm like, there are good parts about being biracial as well, or multicultural. And I think in my adult years, that's one thing that I do really appreciate, the fact that it seems like I have more choice than other people, I'm not as easily pigeonholed. Like I could easily assume different cultures and not have an assumptive premise put on me like, you don't belong there. Like, do you feel that as well? Do you feel like the fluidity of choosing whichever culture, do you feel that freedom?
I'm not sure if I associate it with freedom. I always identify like as mixed. Mm-hmm. I have never explicitly been like, yeah, I'm the black guy or the white guy. It's just a mixture of the two. Mm-hmm. And, that could be the problem. Because, like, oh, if you're not this, then you can't hang out with us. Or, because I've kind of experienced it that way. But it's just what I've chosen because maybe I've convinced myself I can't be one or the other. Like, I guess I get the privilege of being both, or I guess the opportunity. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of how I've identified. Like any standardized test, I'd always, like mixed or other.
I was always so confused filling stuff out as a kid. It's like, I'm not... I remember I filled out on my test one time that I'm Caucasian. My teacher was like, you need to fix this.
Fix? Yeah,
you need to fix this.
What do you mean?
This is wrong, right?
And now you can mark male, female, other... I
fix
that?
I choose not to answer. It's just like I went home and asked my mom, like, what do I write down? Mm-hmm. And she allowed me. She said, put whatever you feel is right. So other it is.
Yeah, I had that exact same situation. I was so confused, especially after my teacher. I got in trouble with the teacher for putting Caucasian.
Weird.
It's like, come on.
Mm-hmm.
But
literally has Asian in the word.
Caucasian. Caucasian. But even now, I'm like, what do I put? Because like every place you go is different. They'll have like Caucasian, black, white, Hispanic.
There's a lot of like either Hispanic or non-Hispanic, I've noticed. Mm-hmm. And that's like the option to choose. I don't know why that's the new category now, but there's not even like all of the options. It's either are you or are you not Hispanic. I'm gonna make this cliche, and I'm sorry for making this cliche, but it still is important to be said. I think it's really powerful that when we accept Christ, we are now looked at as children of God. Because by saying that, that's saying two things simultaneously. One, we're all equal. Mm-hmm. Immediately. We're all children before God. But two, there's no black child of God, white child of God, Asian child of God. There's none of that. You are a child. So, like, you can, it doesn't change the heritage you have, doesn't change the background, any of that stuff. You are a child of God and you are who you are at the exact same time. And it is both equally accepted, regardless. Mm-hmm. And I think that's, I don't know, I think that's powerful because there's a lot of confusion that culture creates because you have two different backgrounds, and probably more, honestly. I'm like, you're not just simply white and Asian. You've got Thailand. You probably also have people that have come from China, and you can probably track that all the way back to the Middle East if you wanted to, in Africa. So it's like, if you really wanted to look at it, like, you're not just simply one thing, nor am I. But in God, with God, you don't have to, you can both be who you are and simplified in such a way that you are a child of God, and you can deal with that, and you can have peace with that in Him because He all sees you as equal parts of Him. Mm-hmm. So, I don't know, that's just... Because I can feel myself slipping into, like, almost like overwhelmedness. Because you have different things you have to contest with of who am I in that.
but God makes it simple.
Right.
And
It's a lot
at
to
the
deal
same,
with.
yeah, and then he gives you the freedom to also explore that at the same time.
Right. It's almost like the ethnicity gets to be God.
That's that hit me.
Well, Jared, I guess our show has run its course, but are there any things that are lingering that you'd like to comment on about being biracial, or anything that you feel need to be said, or just something that you want to say?
We got through the talking points. As I don't. It sounds generic, but I want it to be genuine. Just be open to learning about someone. It doesn't matter what they look like. And they may even act the way they do because it's, they put up that front, they put up that wall, to try and go ahead and deflect all of the trouble that they've already experienced. So, just be open, show some love, start a conversation somewhere, as long as that person is mature enough to handle the subject matter, then everything's going to be fine, just learn about somebody.
Mm-hmm.
Don't assume things are okay just because it was okay that one time, or how that person has kind of just like built up that defense and made it seem like it was okay. Maybe go like, did I go too far with that joke, or like?
Yeah, we literally talked about this right.
Absolutely,
yeah.
So just give me another word for open. Accepting. Thank you. Give me just be more.
I'm here for
be
you.
a little more accepting of other people, and that's absolutely the best first step you can make.
Yeah, I think just touching on that real quick, drawing people out is so important. And what I mean by that is not just accepting them at face value, saying, okay, well, I want to know more about this. I want to put more meat to this. So we joked about this, but how do you actually feel about it? Or I see you do this. I want to know more about that. Because first of all, that's how you build intimacy with people. And, asking somebody, hey, did I go too far? Or, hey, can I hear about this? It's kind of scary because you never know exactly what you're going to get with somebody. Somebody might say, oh, yeah, you actually really offended me. Or they might just put up the wall and say, you know what, I'm good. That doesn't hurt at all. Let's laugh about this. Ha, 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 ha. And they might keep you at arm's length because they've been so hurt,
Right.
But I think there is a gross need for people to feel drawn out, first of all, and also just normalized. The whole ethnicity of God thing. It's so important. It's like feeling normal, feeling seen, feeling equal is so important.
Yeah.
And even if you are biracial, guys, I want to challenge you too, because I know I do this as well. It's easier for me to identify with Jared because we're both biracial and we have some of the similar backgrounds, experiences, whatever.
Sure.
It's easier for me to have that between me and Jared, like a stronger bromance, than with me and Brandon, because we come from very different backgrounds. Mm-hmm. But that in and of itself causes me to have assumptions about him, his motives, how he views me. It's like, Brandon wouldn't understand. We'll try him. Ask him.
Like, would he? Like, you learn about Brandon every day. Like, he's an accepting guy. He's ready to listen.
Mm-hmm.
And like, you can totally make that assumption about people. Like, oh, I'm not going to bring that up. That might make them uncomfortable. Like, make them uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Make it so that like they get to be comfortable.
Mm-hmm.
That's how
you're not going to get to comfortableness with difficult conversations if you never have them.
Mm-hmm. But it's so important to do it in a loving way, because
of course,
I know I've done that in the past where it's like, we're going to talk about this, and if you don't receive it in a loving way, you're a piece of crap. No,
right. Like, don't confront them, but like, just ask. Ask the question.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I like that. That's all really good stuff. So let's close it out. I want to thank you guys for watching. We broadcast every week on Mondays, Fridays, and Saturdays at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and we'll be live again this Monday with Get Naked Monday, where Tim and I will be talking about things going on in our personal life. We'll see you then.
Yeah, I can see far away from where I've been. He says, I see a potential. I see a potential in my eyes. I see a potential. I never lost sight of the reason why you're alive. You're alive. You're alive. We sing Jesus.